XP Pen has just released their latest drawing tablet. It is a 16-inch, super thin pen display. Today, we're going to be checking it out. Hello, my name is Brad and I review tech for creative professionals. We've hit a point where pen displays over the last 2 years or so have kind of peaked. The improvements we've been seeing year to year, model to model, are pretty minimal. I mean, heck, Wacom's best 16-inch Cintiq Pro is now 3 years old, and honestly, that's fine, because it's good enough. So how on earth do you stand out with your new products? Well, XP Pen is doing it through design, and I can honestly say that this is the best looking pen display out there in terms of product design. It's about as thin as an iPad and is probably the best laminated screen I've seen on a pen display to this point. They've really gotten that screen close to the glass, like the kind of closeness you see on an iPad or a really high-end phone. Even though this looks like a full-blown computer, it's not. It's just a second display that you plug into your laptop or desktop computer, and it works on either Windows or on Macs. And what makes it special is that it comes with a pen that you can draw with. Now in the box, we have the pen display itself. Ooh, pretty silver. Then there is the pen, a pen holder with some extra pen nibs tucked in around the back. This fancy USB HDMI combo cord you need to connect to your computer. Also a little power brick that you connect one of the USB cables to. There's even a stand in the box. Oh, and what's this? That's a drawing glove. The screen on this thing is full HD, 1920 by 1080 pixels. Looks really good. And that has to do with the way the screen is bonded to the glass. Sometimes this is called a laminated display. This is nothing new. They've been doing this with drawing tablets for the last 2 years. But what they've done here that's kind of special is how much space they've reduced between the glass and the screen below it. Basically, they've reduced all the space. This doesn't have a huge effect on drawing, but it's a nice touch. It makes this look way more modern than the other pen displays out there that I've used. I would even go so far to say that this screen looks better in some ways than the screens I've seen on the Cintiq Pros. The resolution isn't as high, but that bonding does make a difference. Now the colors out of the box were a bit yellow for my taste, so you might want to jump in there and calibrate it, fiddle with the colors yourself, get them to where you want them to be. The contrast and the viewing angles, all of that was fine. That looked good. I wish it went a little bit brighter though. Along the side you have some volume buttons, but oh, tricks ya, those aren't actually volume buttons. Those are the buttons you use to adjust the screen. And if you just saw a picture of that, that's another reason you might think it's more of a laptop computer than just a monitor. If you watch my videos frequently, you know how much I prefer to have a little bit of tooth on the screen that I'm drawing on. It just makes it easier to control the stylus. Now the downside here is it is going to dull the color a little bit. It's a trade-off. And it's a trade-off that most drawing tablets make by putting some kind of matte screen on all of their displays. Was that the question, Parrot? Brad, why don't you ever talk about pen latency? That is a great question. The pen latency or response time on this device is 16.4 milliseconds, which is pretty good. The smaller that number is, the less lag you're going to see on your pen strokes when you're drawing, at least in theory. The reason I don't talk about it much is because there are other factors at play, whether you're talking about the app that you're drawing in or the overall performance of your computer, that factor into whether you get pen lag or not. I bring this up because I don't want you to think that if you're getting a new tablet with a better response rate that it's just going to magically fix any brush lag you have, especially in a program like Photoshop. The pen has 8,192 levels of pressure sensitivity. I feel the same way about that number. It's great to have, but there are so many more factors that go into the usefulness of a pen beyond just that pressure sensitivity number. So let's take a look at this pen. First thing that I like to check out is pressure. I press lightly and I get a light line and I start adding pressure and that line gets thicker. And what I'm looking for is consistency of pressure as I'm going around curves, things like that. Is it hitting a certain point and getting too thin too soon? It's not. Overall, I think this pen is performing very well and is exactly what I'm looking for when I'm looking for a nice pressure-sensitive pen. I also want to look at how lightly I compress that initial activation rate before it starts to lay down a line. I would say this is okay. I'm pressing pretty light here, but if I go super light, as light as I can go, I don't get any kind of line. So I have seen better, on these kinds of tablets, but this isn't bad. It's just not as active as, say, Wacom or what Huion's doing. And then, of course, my diagonal line test. This is probably the most important one to me. I like to just do slow angled lines, and I like to see, what does this line look like? Can I hold that pressure? Is there any kind of wobble to that line? Oftentimes that's where you're going to find it, in these angled lines. And I'm definitely seeing, a little bit of wave kind of occurring naturally. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that wave is not my hand. So I'm going to grab a ruler. I'll be back in a second. All right, now that I have my ruler, what this is going to rule out is that wave coming from my hand, or is it coming from the pen? I've been doing this long enough to know that it feels like it's coming from the pen more than it's coming from my hand. But I just want to make sure, and I think it's a little bit of both. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. That line actually looks really good, but I can detect a little bit of wave to it. The other thing I like to do are just fast hatch lines, just to see how the pressure works and how it tapers and that sort of thing. And that's another thing that I'm seeing on some of these lines, is when I'm doing it really fast, that taper, kind of shoots out quickly too, and kind of tapers a little funny. That's not the end of the world. Let's slow down those tapers and see what happens a little bit. Still, when I'm slowing it down, it's not quite catching the pressure. Overall, still, I think I'm going to give this pen a B. So I think it does well. I could definitely say Wacom does better. I think even Huion is a little bit of a step up in terms of pen quality, just a tiny bit. But I feel like this is a very solid pen. I usually like to have a flow to my videos where you go from one section to the nice section and the segues dovetail beautifully into each other. No, not today. This is a section of just stuff that I want to talk about. Let me start with the 8 adjustable hotkeys along the side. You can set those to whatever fits your workflow best. The most noticeable design element on this device, though, is that ring. The outer ring is a smooth moving wheel, and you can set it to whatever you want, whether it's panning or zooming. I personally prefer to have my brushes mapped to that. It's not actually changing brushes, it's changing the brush size. So if I go one way, it gets bigger, the other way, it gets a little smaller. The inside circle is a touch ring type of thing, so you can set that in a similar way. It's a cool idea to have like a little touch ring there. I didn't think it was as intuitive or as responsive as the outer ring was. Probably one of those things that you get used to the more that you use it, but for my needs, I just use the outer ring. Another thing worth noting here is that I needed to calibrate the pen a couple of times while I was using it. Lately, these things have been coming from the factory out of the box really well calibrated. Back in the day, you had to calibrate your pen display all the time. This was one that I had to jump in, calibrate a couple times myself, just kind of finesse it. This isn't a deal breaker, but if you get it and it doesn't feel quite right, that could be why. Something that can be fixed with a little bit of patience. Also, this comes with a stand. That's something that I mentioned earlier, but it's only an okay stand. It's just a piece of plastic with like a little flip out foot at the bottom of it. Only sits at one angle. Just so happens it's a really nice angle to draw at, but if you want something better, you're gonna have to invest in it yourself. Pros and the cons. So what are the pros? Kind of everything. There is nothing here that really jumps out as bad. I like to grade on a curve based on price, right? A really expensive Wacom device, I'm going to judge more harshly if it has some issues than I am for something more budget priced. What I think is interesting about this device is it's $400. It's kind of in the middle. If you wanted to, you could go back and grab last year's XP Pen Artist 16 for less money and get pretty much the same drawing experience. I have a full list of these with links to my reviews on my website. This really does feel like it earns that higher price tag. It's not too much expensive. I mean, it's about $100 more, but it looks and feels so much better. It feels much more like a premium device, and they've given this a new name. This isn't an Artist series. This is the Innovator series. I kind of like the idea that they're going for that more premium feel. I would love to see XP Pen continue down this route of having a premium series and then their more budget-friendly Artist line. So if you can afford to get some of those nicer features and have a little bit more money to spend, you could do that with still not having to spend the kind of money you spend on a Wacom display. That would also allow them to do things like move away from the full HD screens to 2K screens or 4K screens, but still have some budget tablets available for people who just can't afford that extra $200 to get a slightly better display. I think there's room in the market for something like that, and the quality of these just keeps going up and up and up. So what do you think? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.